Captain Jake Morrison stared at the view screen as his ship, Aurora's Dawn, drifted through the asteroid field. The rocks around them were huge, some as big as small moons. His crew had been out here for 3 weeks, looking for rare metals that Earth needed for its growing space colonies. "Captain, I'm picking up something strange," said Dr. Lisa Grant from her science station. She was the ship's chief scientist, a woman who could spot unusual readings from miles away. Her fingers moved quickly over her controls as she tried to make sense of what she was seeing. "What kind of strange?" Jake asked, walking over to look at her screen. The bridge was quiet except for the usual hum of the ship's engines and the soft beeping of computers. "It's a signal. Not natural. Definitely artificial," Lisa said, her voice getting more excited. "Captain, I think this might be what we've been hoping to find for decades." Commander Alex Thompson, the ship's tactical officer, looked up from his station. He was a big man with steady hands and a calm voice that never seemed to worry about anything. "You mean aliens?" "I mean intelligence. Something that's not from Earth or any of our colonies," Lisa replied. She worked faster now, trying to clean up the signal so they could understand it better. Maya Rodriguez, the ship's engineer, came up from the lower decks. She had grease on her hands and a worried look on her face. "Captain, if this is first contact, shouldn't we be more careful? We don't know what we're dealing with." Jake nodded. Maya was right to be cautious. Humanity had been searching for other intelligent life for over a century, but they had never found anything. Now that they might have found something, he wasn't. Sure, they were ready. "Lisa, can you decode the signal?" he asked. "I'm trying. It's complex, but there are patterns, mathematical sequences, star charts, and something that looks like language," she said. "Wait, I'm getting something clearer now." The bridge fell silent as a new sound came through the speakers. It was definitely not human. The voice was deep and seemed to echo like it was coming from inside a cave. When it spoke, the words were clear but cold. "Primitive species of the third planet in the system you call Sol. You have been observed. You have been judged. Your technology is weak. Your military is pathetic. Your species exists only because we have allowed it." Jake felt his blood turn cold. This wasn't the peaceful first contact that humanity had always hoped for. This sounded like a threat. The alien voice continued. "I am War Commander Thexvar of the Zephyrian Hegemony. We have conquered 43 species across this section of the galaxy. Your turn has come. You will surrender your worlds and your people. You will serve the hegemony or you will be destroyed." "My God," Lisa whispered. "They're not just making contact. They're declaring war." The message kept playing. "Your species will be given one complete cycle of your star to consider. Surrender. After that time, our fleets will arrive to claim what is ours. Do not resist. Resistance will only make your end more painful. Your weapons cannot harm us. Your ships cannot escape us. Your leaders cannot protect you." Alex's hands moved to his weapon controls, but Jake held up a hand to stop him. "Easy, Alex, let's hear the whole message first. We know about your small colonies on the worlds you call Mars and Luna. We know about your mining operations in the outer system. We know about your research stations and your military bases. Nothing is hidden from us. Nothing can save you." The message ended with a series of numbers and coordinates, then silence. The bridge was quiet for several long moments. Finally, Jake spoke. "Lisa, did you record all of that?" "Every word," she replied. "Captain, the technology needed to send a signal. This far, with this much clarity, it's beyond anything we have." "How long until we can reach Luna Command?" Jake asked Maya. "At full speed, 18 hours, she replied. "Then we need to move fast. Alex, prepare a data packet with everything we've recorded. We need to get this information to Earth immediately." The crew prepared for their emergency journey back to human space. Jake couldn't stop thinking about the aliens' words. They had been watching humanity. They knew about human colonies and military bases, but there was something in the message that bothered him. The aliens sounded so certain, so confident, like they had done this many times before. 3 days later, Jake stood in the command center of Luna Command, Earth's main military space station. The room was filled with the most important military leaders and scientists from across human space. Admiral Sarah Blake, the head of Colonial Defense, stood at the front of the room looking grim. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have a situation unlike anything humanity has ever faced," she said. 3 days ago, Captain Morrison's ship received what appears to be a declaration of war from an alien empire calling itself the Zephyrian Hegemony. Dr. Elena Vasquez, Earth's top expert on alien technology, stepped forward. "I've analyzed the signal and the technology behind it. Their faster-than-light communication systems are at least 50 years ahead of ours. If their weapons and ships are similarly advanced, we could be facing an enemy we simply cannot defeat through conventional means." General Robert Hayes, head of Earth's military forces, shook his head. "We've been preparing for this possibility for decades. Our fleets are strong. Our weapons are advanced. Our people are ready to fight." "With respect, General," Dr. Vasquez replied, "their message suggests they've conquered 43 other species. They wouldn't be this confident if they didn't have the power to back up their threats." Jake had been quiet during most of the meeting, but now he spoke up. "There's something else. During our encounter with what I believe was one of their scout ships, I noticed something interesting about how they operated." "Go on," Admiral Blake said. "They're methodical, almost mechanical in how they approach things. Their message followed a very specific pattern. Their ship movements were precise, but predictable. They seemed to do everything according to some kind of plan or protocol." Dr. Vasquez frowned. "What are you suggesting, Captain?" "I'm suggesting that maybe their biggest strength is also their biggest weakness. They're so organized, so systematic, that they might not be able to adapt when something unexpected happens." "That's a dangerous assumption," General Hayes said. "We can't bet humanity's survival on the hope that the aliens aren't as smart as they seem." Admiral Blake held up her hand for silence. "We need to consider all possibilities. Captain Morrison, you've had direct contact with them. What's your assessment?" Jake thought carefully before answering. "They're powerful and they're dangerous, but they're also overconfident. They've given us a full year to surrender, like they're not worried about what we might do with that time. Maybe they should be." "What do you mean?" Dr. Vasquez asked. "I mean that in all of human history we've never been very good at following rules or doing what we're supposed to do. Every time someone has tried to conquer us, we've found ways to fight back that no one expected. Maybe that's what we need to do here." The room fell quiet as everyone considered Jake's words. Finally, Admiral Blake spoke. "Very well. We have 1 year to prepare. General Hayes, begin mobilizing our fleets, but do it quietly. Dr. Vasquez, I want you to analyze everything we know about Zephyrian technology and find weaknesses. Captain Morrison, I want you to think about unconventional tactics. If these aliens are as predictable as you think, maybe we can use that against them." As the meeting ended and people began to leave, Jake felt a strange sense of hope. Humanity had faced impossible odds before. They had survived ice ages, plagues, wars, and disasters that should have wiped them out. Maybe this time would be no different. The Zephyrians had given humanity 1 year to surrender. They probably thought that was generous. They probably thought humans would spend that time in fear and despair. But Jake knew better. Humans didn't give up. They got angry. They got creative. They found ways to fight back that no one saw coming. The aliens had made a mistake. They had challenged the wrong species. Now they were about to learn what happened when you threatened humanity's freedom. 3 weeks had passed since the alien message, and everything had changed. Admiral Marcus Chen stood on the bridge of his flagship New Horizon, watching the edge of human space through the main view screen. His fleet of 47 ships was spread out in a defensive formation around the outer colonies. They were ready for war, but nobody knew if they were ready enough. "Admiral, we're receiving a transmission," said Communications Officer Betty Walsh. "It's them, the aliens." "Put it on screen," Marcus ordered. The view screen flickered, and suddenly they were looking at an alien face. It was tall and narrow, with silver skin that seemed to shine under bright lights. Its eyes were large and completely black, and when it spoke, its voice was the same cold, echoing sound they had heard before. "I am War Commander Thexvar of the Zephyrian Hegemony. Our advance fleet has arrived at the border of your territory. You have ignored our generous offer of surrender. This was unwise. Dr. Kevin Walsh, the fleet's communication expert, was recording everything and trying to learn more about how the aliens talked and thought. He noticed that their language was very formal and followed strict patterns. They never seemed to use casual words or change their tone. War Commander Thexvar continued speaking. Your resistance ends now. We will demonstrate the power of the hegemony. Your colony called New Geneva will be taken as an example to your species. Surrender now, and the rest of your people may live as servants. Continue to resist, and we will destroy every human world. The transmission ended and the bridge was quiet for a moment. Then Lieutenant Colonel Amy Foster's voice came through from Mars Defense Platform Olympus. Admiral, I'm tracking their fleet movements. They maintain perfect geometric formations. Every ship is exactly where military mathematics says it should be. Interesting, Marcus replied. Captain Davis, what do you see from Shadowrunner? Captain Ryan Davis had taken his stealth ship deep into space to watch the alien fleet from a safe distance. His voice came through clearly despite being so far away. Admiral, they're impressive, but they're also predictable. Every maneuver follows standard military doctrine. They do everything by the book, but it's like they only have one book. Marcus thought about what Captain Morrison had said during the meeting at Luna Command. The aliens were systematic and organized, but maybe that made them inflexible. All ships maintain positions but be ready to move. I want to see how they handle their first real battle with humans. Meanwhile, on Earth, Dr. Patricia Moore was working around the clock in her laboratory. She had been studying human psychology and military history, trying to understand what made humans different from other species. Her research was giving her some interesting ideas. The key is chaos, she told her assistant, Dr. Frank Miller. Every other species we can imagine would develop organized, logical military tactics. But humans evolved differently. We had to survive against predators, natural disasters, and each other. We learned to be unpredictable because predictable humans died. So you think our chaotic nature is actually an advantage? Frank asked. I think it's the only advantage we have, Patricia replied. The aliens have better technology, more ships, and more experience, but they've never fought anyone like us. Back in space, the Zephyrian fleet was moving toward New Geneva, a mining colony on the edge of human territory. The colony had about 50,000 people, mostly miners and their families. It wasn't a military target, but the aliens had chosen it to send a message. Mayor John Parker was in the colony's emergency command center with Sheriff Kate Williams and the other local leaders. They had received warnings from the fleet, but there was no time to evacuate everyone. How long until they get here? Kate asked. 6 hours, replied Tommy Green, the colony's communications officer. Admiral Chen says the fleet is too far away to help us in time. John looked around the room at the worried faces of his people. New Geneva wasn't a military colony. They were miners, engineers, and families, but they were also human beings, and humans had never been good at giving up without a fight. All right, he said. We can't stop them, but we can make them work for it. Kate, get every security officer armed and ready. Tommy, contact the mining crews. Tell them we need every piece of heavy equipment they can spare. What are you thinking? Kate asked. I'm thinking that these aliens are used to people surrendering when they show up. Maybe it's time someone surprised them. The Zephyrian fleet arrived exactly on schedule. Their ships were sleek and silver, much larger than human vessels. They formed a perfect circle around the colony and began broadcasting their demands for surrender. War Commander Thexvar expected the usual response. In 43 previous conquests, the local population would either surrender immediately or flee in panic. Instead, he received a transmission from the colony's leader. This is Mayor John Parker of New Geneva Colony. You are not welcome here. Leave our space immediately or face the consequences. Thexvar was confused. His intelligence reports indicated that this was a civilian colony with minimal defenses. Why were they threatening him? Your threats are meaningless, he replied. You have no weapons that can harm our ships. Surrender now and your deaths will be quick. We'll see about that, John replied, and the transmission ended. What happened next was unlike anything the Zephyrians had ever experienced. Instead of organizing a proper military defense, the humans seemed to attack randomly from all directions. Mining ships loaded with explosives rammed into Zephyrian vessels. Heavy mining equipment was used as improvised weapons. Workers in mining suits attacked alien landing parties with cutting tools and industrial lasers. The humans didn't follow any recognizable military tactics. They seemed to make up their strategy as they went along, adapting and changing based on what worked. When the aliens adjusted their defenses to counter one type of attack, the humans immediately switched to something completely different. Captain Lisa Turner, commanding a small group of civilian ships that had joined the fight, used tactics that would have been considered insane by any military academy. She hid her ships in the asteroid field around the colony and attacked the alien fleet from unexpected angles. When the aliens tried to chase her, she led them into areas where the mining crews had set up explosive traps. The battle lasted for 6 hours. The Zephyrians eventually won, but not in the way they had expected. They lost 4 ships and over 200 soldiers, taking a mining colony that should have surrendered without a fight. Their casualties were higher than in their previous 10 conquests combined. War Commander Thexvar stood in his command center, staring at the damage reports. His aide, Sub-Commander Kreldan, seemed equally confused. War Commander, how did a civilian colony cause such damage to our forces? Kreldan asked. They fought without logic, Thexvar replied. Their tactics made no sense. They used civilian equipment as weapons. They attacked our strongest positions while ignoring our weakest. They seemed to be making decisions without any plan. Perhaps they were desperate, Kreldan suggested. No, Thexvar said slowly. Desperate species follow predictable patterns. They either surrender quickly or fight with maximum aggression. These humans did neither. They fought chaotically, changing their methods constantly. Our battle computers could not predict their next move because their moves had no logical basis. Back on Earth, news of the Battle of New Geneva spread quickly. The colony had been lost, but the human resistance had shocked everyone, including the humans themselves. Admiral Chen called an emergency meeting of all military commanders. The good news is that we can hurt them, he announced. The bad news is that they're still much stronger than we are. But Captain Morrison was right. They're not used to fighting enemies who don't follow the rules. Dr. Patricia Moore presented her research to the assembled officers. Gentlemen and ladies, I believe we've discovered something important. The Zephyrians are highly organized and efficient, but they're also mentally inflexible. They can't adapt to truly random behavior because their minds work logically and systematically. What are you proposing? Asked General Hayes. I'm proposing that we stop trying to fight them like a normal military would. Instead, we fight them like humans. We be unpredictable, chaotic, and creative. We do things that don't make sense to their logical minds. Commander Tony Martinez, who had been listening quietly, spoke up. You're talking about turning military doctrine upside down, using tactics that are deliberately inefficient and random. Exactly, Patricia replied. Because efficient and logical tactics are what they're prepared for. They've conquered 43 species using the same methods because every species they fought used predictable strategies. We need to be the first species that doesn't. Admiral Chen thought about this for several minutes. It went against everything he had learned in military school, but the results at New Geneva were hard to ignore. A civilian colony using improvised tactics had inflicted more damage on the Zephyrians than most military fleets could manage. Very well, he said finally. We'll try it your way, but we need to be smart about our chaos. Random tactics are still tactics. We need to be unpredictable, but we also need to win. As the meeting ended, everyone knew that humanity was about to try something that had never been attempted before. President Victoria Stone stood before the combined representatives of all human colonies, her face serious but determined. The great assembly hall on Earth was packed with delegates from Mars, Luna, the asteroid colonies, and the outer system stations. Everyone knew this speech would change the course of human history. My fellow humans, she began, her voice carrying across the silent room. We face an enemy that believes we are weak. They think we will surrender because we are young. and small compared to their empire. They are wrong. The crowd stirred and Victoria continued. 3 days ago, our miners and families at New Geneva showed these aliens something they had never seen before. They showed them what happens when you threaten human freedom. Today, I am announcing Operation Wildcard. We will not fight this war the way our enemies expect. We will fight it the human way. Back in space, Admiral Chen was already putting the new strategy into action. His fleet had been reorganized into smaller independent groups that could act without waiting for orders from headquarters. Each group had complete freedom to choose their own tactics and targets. Commander Lisa Turner now commanded a squadron of destroyers called Echo Flight. Her ships were fast and lightly armed, perfect for the new style of warfare they were about to attempt. Instead of staying in formation like proper military vessels, her ships scattered across the star system like a pack of wild animals hunting prey. Remember, she told her captains over the communication system, the aliens expect us to attack their strongest positions first, then work our way down to weaker targets. So we're going to do exactly the opposite. We'll hit random targets with random methods, keep them guessing. Her first target was a Zephyrian supply convoy heading toward their main fleet. Instead of attacking it directly, Echo Flight hid among a group of civilian cargo ships that were fleeing the war zone. When the alien escort ships came close to inspect the civilian vessels, the human warships suddenly revealed themselves and attacked from point-blank range. The Zephyrian escort commander, sub-leader Vextar, was completely unprepared for this tactic. His training had taught him to identify military threats and respond accordingly. He had never considered that enemy warships might disguise themselves as fleeing civilians. How did they get so close without our sensors detecting them? He asked his tactical officer. They were broadcasting civilian identification codes, came the reply. Our computers classified them as non-threatening refugees. But military vessels would never use such deception, Vextar said, confused. It violates all accepted rules of warfare. Apparently humans do not follow accepted rules, his officer replied grimly. Meanwhile, Captain Ben Rogers was implementing an even more unusual strategy. His carrier ship, Defiant Spirit, was launching attacks using modified civilian spacecraft, piloted by volunteers. These small ships were too numerous and too random for the Zephyrian targeting computers to handle effectively. The alien systems were designed to prioritize targets based on military importance and threat level, but when faced with hundreds of small craft attacking in completely random patterns, the computers became confused. They couldn't determine which targets were most dangerous because the humans kept changing their approach. Pilot Officer Maria Santos was flying one of these modified civilian craft. She had been a cargo pilot before the war, transporting supplies between colonies. Now she was diving her small ship directly at a Zephyrian battlecruiser, using maneuvers that would have been impossible in a proper military fighter. Maria, what are you doing? Her squadron leader asked over the radio. You're flying straight into their main guns. That's the point, Maria replied, spinning her ship in a corkscrew pattern that made no tactical sense but somehow avoided the alien weapons fire. They're aiming where they think I should be, not where I actually am. She managed to get close enough to the battlecruiser to fire her weapons directly into its shield generators. The damage was minimal, but the psychological effect was enormous. The Zephyrian crew had never seen such reckless flying, and they didn't know how to respond to it. Back on Earth, Dr. Rachel Kim was working with the Military Research Division to develop new weapons based on the same principles of unpredictability. Traditional weapons were designed to work the same way every time, making them reliable but also predictable. Rachel's team was creating weapons that changed their behavior randomly. The key is adaptive targeting, she explained to General Hayes during a briefing. Our missiles will change their approach pattern every few seconds. The alien defense systems can't adapt fast enough to counter weapons that are constantly changing their own operating parameters. But won't that make our weapons less effective? The general asked. Maybe, Rachel admitted, but it will also make them impossible to defend against. The aliens are used to analyzing enemy weapons and developing perfect countermeasures. They can't develop countermeasures against weapons that work differently every time they're used. The First test of these new weapons came during an attack on a Zephyrian mining operation in the outer system. Commander Paul Grant led a small task force of human ships, armed with Rachel's adaptive weapons. When they fired their missiles at the alien facilities, the weapons behaved in ways that defied all military logic. Some missiles flew in straight lines, others zigzagged randomly. Some exploded on impact. Others penetrated deep into their targets before detonating. A few even changed their targets in mid-flight, attacking different facilities than they had been aimed at originally. The Zephyrian base commander, war leader Dexmore, watched in amazement as his defensive systems failed to stop weapons that seemed to have no consistent behavior pattern. "How are we supposed to defend against weapons that change their function randomly?" he asked his tactical staff. "We cannot," came the reply. "Our defense computers require predictable enemy behavior to calculate optimal countermeasures. These weapons provide no consistent data for analysis." But the most effective human tactic was being developed by Colonel Steve Morrison, Captain Jake Morrison's brother. Steve was organizing resistance movements on worlds that had been occupied by the Zephyrians. His approach was based on thousands of years of human military history, drawing tactics from ancient guerrilla warfare to modern special operations. The key difference was that Steve's resistance fighters refused to follow any established pattern. One day they might attack supply convoys. The next day they might target communication arrays. Sometimes they would focus on military installations. Other times they would disrupt civilian infrastructure that the aliens needed to maintain their occupation. On the occupied world of Kepler-7, Steve's resistance cell included former miners, teachers, shopkeepers, and retirees. They had no formal military training, but they had something the aliens couldn't understand: the human ability to improvise and adapt. "Today we're going to attack their food distribution center," Steve told his team during a secret meeting in an abandoned warehouse. "Not because it's strategically important, but because they won't expect it." "Why would we attack a food center?" asked Nancy Clark, a former school teacher who had become one of his best demolition experts. "Because they're expecting us to attack their military bases or communication centers," Steve replied. "They've reinforced those targets, but they've left their food distribution lightly guarded because no logical military force would consider it a priority target." The attack was a complete success, not because of the damage it caused, but because of the confusion it created. The Zephyrian occupation forces had to divert resources to protect facilities they had never considered military targets. Their security planning became a nightmare as they tried to predict what the humans might attack next. War Commander Thexvar was beginning to understand that he was facing an enemy unlike any he had encountered before. His reports to the Hegemony High Command reflected his growing confusion and concern. "The humans do not fight according to any recognizable military doctrine," he wrote. "Their tactics appear to be based on deliberate chaos rather than strategic planning. They attack targets of minimal military value while ignoring obvious strategic objectives. Their weapons behave unpredictably, making defensive countermeasures nearly impossible to develop." He paused in his writing, trying to find words to describe what he was experiencing. "It is as if they are fighting a completely different war than the one we are prepared for. Every time we adapt our tactics to counter their previous attacks, they change to something entirely new. They seem to be making up their strategy as they go along." The breakthrough moment came when Captain Nicole Thompson, commanding the experimental ship Phoenix Rising, encountered a Zephyrian heavy cruiser that was hunting human civilian ships. Instead of engaging in normal combat, Nicole decided to try something that no sane military commander would ever attempt. She aimed her ship directly at the alien vessel and accelerated to maximum speed. As she approached, she armed her ship's self-destruct system and prepared to ram the enemy ship while simultaneously detonating her power core. The Zephyrian captain, seeing this maneuver, assumed it was a malfunction. No rational being would deliberately destroy their own ship in such a wasteful attack. He ordered his crew to ignore the approaching human vessel and focus on more logical threats. 6 months had passed since the war began, and nothing was going according to plan. War Commander Thexvar stood in his command center aboard the flagship Eternal Glory, staring at casualty reports that made no sense. His forces had superior technology, more ships, and centuries of military experience. Yet somehow they were losing ground to the humans every day. War Commander, his communications officer, announced, "The High Command is requesting another status report." Thexavar dreaded these calls. How could he explain to his superiors that a species they had dismissed as primitive was systematically destroying Zephyrian forces using tactics that seemed to have no logic or reason? The holographic image of Supreme War Leader Kethmor appeared before him. Kethmor was ancient, even by Zephyrian standards, and had personally overseen the conquest of 17 different species. His disappointment was clear in his cold, black eyes. "Thexavar, your progress reports are becoming increasingly disturbing. How is it possible that a single primitive species is causing more casualties than our last 10 conquests combined?" "Supreme War Leader, the humans do not fight as other species fight," Thexavar replied carefully. "Their methods are chaotic and unpredictable. Our battle computers cannot analyze their strategies because they appear to have no consistent strategy." "Impossible," Kethmor said firmly. "All intelligent species develop logical military doctrines. You are simply not adapting quickly enough to their methods." "With respect, Supreme War Leader, I believe these humans may be fundamentally different from other species we have encountered. They seem to view chaos itself as a tactical advantage." Kethmor's expression grew even colder. "You are making excuses, Thexavar. I am dispatching the Void Talon battle group under my personal command. When I arrive, I will show you how to properly subdue these mammals." The transmission ended, leaving Thexavar alone with his doubts. In 6 months of fighting, he had learned to respect the humans in a way that troubled him deeply. They were not just unpredictable, they were getting better at being unpredictable. Meanwhile, Commander Tony Martinez was proving that human adaptability extended far beyond individual creativity. He had taken command of the reformed Colonial Defense Fleet and was implementing strategies that evolved in real time based on battlefield results. "The key is learning while fighting," he explained to his staff aboard the command ship Liberty's Call. "The aliens study our tactics and develop countermeasures, but by the time they figure out how to stop us, we've already moved on to something completely different." His latest innovation was the creation of chaos cells, small groups of ships that operated independently with only one rule: never repeat the same tactic twice. Each cell was commanded by officers who were encouraged to be as creative and unpredictable as possible. Captain Diana Ross commanded one of these chaos cells aboard the stealth ship Night Stalker. Her orders were simple: cause as much confusion as possible behind enemy lines. What she did with those orders was limited only by her imagination. This week, she had decided to attack Zephyrian supply lines by disguising her ships as asteroids. Her crew had covered their vessels with rock and metal debris, making them nearly impossible to distinguish from natural space objects on long-range sensors. "Captain, we're approaching the alien convoy," reported her tactical officer, Lieutenant Gary Powell. "They have no idea we're here." "Good," Diana replied. "Remember, we're not trying to destroy their supplies. We're trying to make them paranoid. Hit them hard, then disappear. I want them to start seeing threats in every asteroid field." The attack was perfectly executed. Night Stalker and her sister ships emerged from what the Zephyrians thought was empty space, destroyed 2 supply vessels, and vanished back into the asteroid field before the escort ships could react. The psychological impact was exactly what Diana had intended. The Zephyrian convoy commander, sub-leader Kextal, was left staring at his sensors in confusion. "How many enemy ships attacked us?" he asked his crew. "Sensors indicate 3 vessels, but they disappeared completely after the attack," came the reply. "Disappeared? Ships cannot simply disappear. The humans appear to have developed stealth technology that makes their ships undetectable when not actively maneuvering." Kextal felt a chill of fear. If human ships could hide anywhere, then nowhere in Zephyrian space was truly safe. Every asteroid, every piece of space debris, could potentially be an enemy vessel waiting to attack. Back on Earth, Dr. Helen Carter had made a breakthrough in understanding Zephyrian psychology that would change the entire course of the war. Her research into alien behavior patterns had revealed something crucial about their mental processes. They're not just organized, she explained to President Stone during an emergency briefing. Their entire species evolved to think in terms of predictable patterns. On their homeworld, everything followed regular cycles. Seasons, weather, even their prey animals all behaved according to fixed patterns. What does that mean for us? The president asked. It means that chaos isn't just uncomfortable for them, it's actually painful. Their brains are wired to find patterns and create order. When they encounter genuine randomness, it causes them psychological distress, similar to what humans would experience from constant loud noise or flashing lights. Dr. Carter's research led to the development of chaos protocols, systematic methods for being as unsystematic as possible. These weren't just random actions, but carefully planned unpredictability designed to cause maximum psychological disruption to the alien forces. The first major test of chaos protocols came when Lieutenant Commander Paul Grant led a boarding action against the Zephyrian flagship Eternal Glory. Instead of attempting to capture or destroy the ship, Grant's team had a different objective: to drive the crew insane with unpredictability. Remember, he told his boarding party as they prepared to breach the alien hull, we're not here to fight a battle. We're here to create chaos. Plant the devices, avoid unnecessary combat, and get out. The boarding action itself went perfectly. Grant's team moved through the alien ship like ghosts, avoiding patrols and security systems. But instead of attacking vital systems, they planted thousands of small devices throughout the vessel. The devices were Dr. Carter's invention, chaos generators. Each one was programmed to make random noises, flash lights at irregular intervals, and emit various smells and sounds at unpredictable times. Individually, they were harmless. Together, they created an environment of constant, unpredictable stimulation. Within hours of the boarding party's escape, the effects became apparent. The Zephyrian crew began showing signs of severe psychological stress. Their efficiency dropped dramatically as they became increasingly paranoid and unable to concentrate. War Commander Thexvar found himself jumping at every unexpected sound, constantly looking over his shoulder for threats that might not exist. His crew was displaying similar symptoms, making mistakes they would never have made under normal circumstances. War Commander, his chief medical officer reported, the crew is experiencing what can only be described as a form of psychological warfare we have never encountered. The constant unpredictable stimuli are overwhelming our neural processing systems. Can the devices be removed? Thexvar asked desperately. We have found and removed over 3,000 of them, but more keep appearing. Either the humans planted far more devices than we initially believed, or some of them are reproducing themselves. The truth was even worse than they suspected. Some of the devices were indeed self-replicating, using materials from the ship itself to create new chaos generators. Dr. Carter had designed them to ensure that the psychological attack would continue indefinitely. The breaking point came when Thexvar made a decision that would have been unthinkable for any Zephyrian commander. He ordered the evacuation of his own flagship. The crew's psychological state had deteriorated to the point where they were no longer capable of operating the vessel effectively. We are abandoning the ship, he announced to his shocked officers. Transfer all essential personnel to the escort vessels. We will destroy Eternal Glory, rather than allow it to continue affecting our forces. The evacuation was completed, and the flagship was destroyed by its own escort ships. But the psychological damage had already spread throughout the Zephyrian fleet. Every ship, every station, every base was now suspected of harboring chaos devices. The aliens began spending more time searching for imaginary threats than fighting the actual war. Admiral Chen received reports of the flagship's destruction with amazement and satisfaction. They destroyed their own command ship rather than continue to operate under chaotic conditions, he told his staff. I think we're beginning to understand just how effective our psychological warfare can be. Commander Martinez took the lessons learned from the Eternal Glory incident and applied them on a larger scale. If we can make them afraid of their own ships, we can make them afraid of everything, he realized. Human forces began implementing ghost attacks, operations designed to create the impression of human presence without actually engaging in combat. Ships would appear on sensors for brief moments before disappearing. Strange signals would be detected from empty space. Equipment would malfunction in ways that suggested sabotage but left no evidence. Admiral Stone stood before the largest gathering of human military leaders in history. Representatives from every colony, every fleet, and every resistance cell had come together for this moment. The war had lasted 8 months, and now humanity was ready to take the final step. "For too long we have been fighting defensively," she announced to the assembled commanders. "The aliens brought this war to our doorstep, thinking we would surrender without a fight. They were wrong. Now it's time to show them what happens when you wake up a sleeping giant." Operation Chaos Storm was about to begin. Unlike any military operation in human history, it was designed around the principle of maximum unpredictability. The human fleet would split into dozens of independent task forces, each operating under completely different tactical doctrines. Captain Andrew Clark received his orders aboard the Star Wanderer. His task force would use exploration tactics, treating the war like a scientific expedition. They would attack targets based on curiosity rather than military value, studying alien reactions and adapting their methods accordingly. "We're not trying to destroy their military," he explained to his crew. "We're trying to understand them better than they understand themselves. Every attack will teach us something new about how they think." Meanwhile, Commander Lisa Turner would lead Echo Flight using merchant vessel tactics. Her ships would disguise themselves as cargo haulers and traders, striking at commercial targets that the aliens had never considered military objectives. "The beauty of this approach," she told her captains, "is that they don't know how to defend against attacks on their economy. They've spent centuries perfecting military defenses, but their civilian infrastructure is completely vulnerable." Captain Ben Rogers had perhaps the strangest assignment of all. His task force would operate like pirates, following no military protocol whatsoever. They would attack whatever looked valuable, retreat whenever they felt like it, and generally behave like criminals rather than soldiers. "Forget everything you learned in military academy," he told his officers aboard the Defiant Spirit. "We're not representing the Colonial Defense Force anymore. We're representing chaos itself." The psychological impact of Operation Chaos Storm was immediate and devastating. Supreme War Leader Keth Moore found himself facing not one enemy, but dozens of different enemies, each using completely different methods and targeting completely different objectives. His tactical computers, designed to analyze enemy patterns and develop countermeasures, simply couldn't function. Every time they identified a human strategy and prepared to counter it, the humans would switch to something entirely different. "How many different human fleets are we fighting?" he asked his intelligence officers in frustration. "Our analysis suggests at least 40 separate task forces, each operating independently," came the reply. "But their coordination suggests a single command structure, even though their tactics suggest complete independence." "That makes no sense," Kethmore said. "How can they be both coordinated and independent?" "We do not know, Supreme War Leader. Human military doctrine appears to embrace contradictions that our logic systems cannot process. The breakthrough came when Dr. William Hayes completed his work on quantum-based decision-making systems. These chaos computers used the fundamental randomness of quantum mechanics to generate battle plans that were literally impossible to predict. The key insight, he explained to Admiral Stone during a secure communication, is that true randomness cannot be analyzed or countered. If our tactical decisions are based on quantum uncertainty, then the aliens cannot develop countermeasures because there's nothing logical to counter. The first test of the chaos computers came during the Battle of Proxima Station, a major supply hub in Zephyrian territory. Admiral Marcus Chen commanded the human task force, but the actual battle plan was generated entirely by quantum computers. The attack made no sense from any conventional military perspective. Some human ships attacked the most heavily defended positions, while others ignored obvious targets completely. The timing of the assault was random, with different units attacking at seemingly arbitrary intervals. War Commander Thexvar, commanding the station's defense, watched in amazement as his carefully prepared defensive plans became useless. "They're attacking our strongest positions while ignoring our weaknesses," he reported to Kethmore. "Their assault pattern has no logical basis." Then counterattack their weaknesses, Kethmore ordered. We cannot identify their weaknesses, Supreme War Leader. Their formation changes constantly, and their tactics appear to be generated randomly. Our computers cannot predict their next move because their moves are based on quantum uncertainty rather than strategic planning. The battle ended with the complete destruction of Proxima Station, achieved through methods that violated every principle of military efficiency. The human victory was so illogical that it actually caused several Zephyrian officers to have nervous breakdowns trying to understand what had happened. But the ultimate test of human unpredictability came at the climax of the war, the Battle of Zephyr Prime, the alien homeworld itself. Instead of mounting a conventional assault on the most heavily defended planet in the galaxy, humanity did something that no species in galactic history had ever attempted. Admiral Jake Morrison, promoted after his brother's successful resistance campaigns, approached the alien homeworld with a single ship, a modified diplomatic vessel called the New Dawn. His message to the Zephyrian government was broadcast across their entire planet. People of the Zephyrian hegemony, he began, his voice calm and reasonable. We are here to offer you a choice. Not the choice you offered us, surrender or die, but a real choice with real options. Supreme War Leader Kethmore was in the planetary command center, surrounded by defensive fleets that could have destroyed 1,000 human ships. Yet he found himself listening to this single human's words with growing unease. Your first option is unconditional surrender, Jake continued. Admit that your war against humanity was wrong, withdraw from all human territory, and accept whatever terms we choose to impose. Ridiculous, Kethmore muttered. One human ship was offering terms to the entire hegemony. Your second option is negotiated peace. We sit down together and work out an agreement that both sides can live with. You keep your empire, we keep our freedom, and we find ways to coexist without fighting. This option was more reasonable, but still presumptuous, coming from a species that the hegemony had intended to conquer. Your third option, Jake said, and his voice became colder, is to continue this war. But I want you to understand what that means. For 8 months, you've been fighting a defensive war against human forces that were trying to protect their homes. If you choose to continue fighting, you'll be facing offensive human forces that are trying to destroy yours. The threat was clear, but what made it terrifying was its unpredictability. No one knew what an offensive human campaign would look like, because humans had never launched one before. You have one standard day to decide, Jake concluded. After that, we will assume you have chosen to continue the war, and we will act accordingly. The transmission ended, leaving Zephyr Prime in chaos. The government had never faced such an ultimatum from a species they considered inferior. More importantly, they had no idea what the humans would do if they refused. Supreme War Leader Kethmore called an emergency meeting of the Hegemony High Council. The most powerful leaders of 43 conquered worlds gathered to discuss the human ultimatum. This is obviously a bluff, declared High Counselor Mexvar. One ship cannot threaten our entire homeworld. Can it not? Asked Counselor Texran quietly. 8 months ago, we said one human colony could not threaten our advanced fleet. We were wrong. 3 months ago, we said human psychological warfare could not affect our experienced crews. We were wrong again. What are you suggesting? Kethmore demanded. I am suggesting that we have consistently underestimated these humans. Every time we have assumed they cannot do something, they have proven us wrong. Now they are telling us they can do something we consider impossible. Perhaps we should consider the possibility that they are right. The debate continued for hours, but the outcome was inevitable. The Zephyrian leadership had been broken by months of unpredictable human warfare. They no longer trusted their own judgment about what humans could or could not do. We will negotiate, Kethmore announced finally. Send a message to the human ship. Tell them we accept their second option. The Treaty of New Geneva was signed. 3 weeks later, at the rebuilt colony where the war had begun, the ceremony was attended by representatives from both species, though the humans outnumbered the aliens significantly. Admiral Jake Morrison sat across from Supreme War Leader Kethmore as they finalized the agreement. The terms were surprisingly fair, The Zephyrians would withdraw from all human territory and pay reparations for the damage they had caused, but they would keep their empire and their independence. I must ask, Kethmore said during a break in the negotiations. How did you do it? How did a species we considered primitive defeat the greatest military force in the galaxy? Jake smiled. You didn't lose to us because we were stronger or smarter. You lost because you tried to predict what we would do, and we made sure you could never succeed.